Today our topic is cellular respiration, and this is connected to what we talked about yesterday, which was photosynthesis. Cellular respiration is the process that both plants and animals use to turn their food into energy that they can actually use for body functions and processes. In other words, it's a process of turning food, which is in the form of glucose, into energy in the form of ATP. Because as we also remember from yesterday, ATP is the form of energy that organisms can directly use. What you see on this slide is sort of a picture of the two pathways that can occur to change glucose into energy. The first pathway on the top occurs in the presence of oxygen. So when oxygen is present, our one molecule of glucose yields us 36 molecules of ATP. When not enough oxygen is present, our one molecule of glucose gets us only 2 molecules of ATP. So this is kind of like aerobic exercise where I'm walking or jogging slowly enough that my body can provide enough oxygen for all of my cells. The second pathway down here is really a process where I'm running now really fast and I cannot provide enough oxygen for my cells to kind of keep up. On this slide, we want to know the locations of the processes that are part of cellular respiration. First, you want to write glucose in here because that's the molecule that we start with. Glycolysis, which is the first of these 3 steps, if you will, occurs in the cytoplasm. And cytoplasm is kind of like the liquid fluid that is in cells between the nucleus in the middle, so from the edge of the nucleus to the edge of the cell where the cell membrane is. Organelles are smaller things that are set in the cytoplasm, and the mitochondria is one of those organelles. We often refer to the mitochondria as the mighty mitochondria because it is the organelle where most of the cell's energy, or ATP, is created. So the mighty mitochondria is the organelle in the cytoplasm where most of the cell's ATP is produced. And I may have just said that twice because I had to pause this in the middle and start again. Moving on then, we'll look at the process of glycolysis, which is really taking the reactant glucose and breaking it into the product pyruvic acid. And that allows the cell to gain some ATP. So as we look step by step, the first thing that happens is the cell has to actually invest or add 2 pieces of ATP, 2 molecules, to go ahead and start the process of breaking the glucose into 2 pieces. As we look further, as the reactions continue, eventually the cell gets 4 molecules of ATP out as our final product, pyruvic acid, is produced. We also get 2 molecules of NADH. And both of these molecules are high energy molecules which can transfer energy from one molecule to another. You might think of this transfer between low energy molecules and high energy molecules kind of like an empty bucket. The low energy one being the low bucket, it temporarily holds the energy. You'd fill the bucket up, that would kind of be like the high energy state. And then when that energy is used for some cell process, the bucket is empty, and we're back to sort of the lower energy molecule. So ultimately what's happening here in the first step of glycolysis is our glucose gets broken down into two molecules of pyruvic acid. We can count and see that we haven't gained or lost carbons. We've simply rearranged them in different ways. The net gain for the cell for each glucose molecule that undergoes glycolysis is positive 2 ATPs. If it takes 2 ATPs to start the reaction, but I gain 4 at the end, 4 that I gain minus the 2 it took me to start, I get a net gain of 2 ATP molecules for each glucose molecule that I'm breaking up. And this can happen millions of times in the cell at, kind of simultaneously. And so we would get quite a bit of ATP this way. Moving to our last slide for this part of the lecture, they've taken the 2 steps on the previous slide to break glucose down and sort of made them into one. So you see our net gain of 2 ATP molecules and 2 NADH molecules. And this works all fine and well until we run out of low energy molecules to accept the energy as this glucose becomes pyruvic acid. So glycolysis basically is going to stop when we run out of this NAD+. You might think of plan A for your cells is burning glucose in the presence of oxygen. That's the preferred method. Plan B is breaking it down through glycolysis and getting our gain of 2 ATPs. And plan C is, well, what happens when glycolysis stops because we've run out of NAD+ molecules? The third thing, or the kind of plan C, if you will, is the pyruvic acid gets converted into lactic acid. And the benefit to your cells of that is it takes a little energy to make this reaction happen. As a result of that, we get more of these low energy molecules produced. And then they can return to this reaction so that glycolysis can continue. Now, what's the downside of that? Well, this lactic acid has a negative effect on cells, and specifically muscle tissue. It's an acid, so its pH is on the lower end of the scale. So as it builds up, the pH of the cell itself starts to drop. When the pH drops to a critical level, that tells the pain sensors, or the pain, receptors, in your cells to start firing. And when those pain receptors fire, that's bad writing, your brain interprets that as pain. So what you feel is you feel that burn in your muscles if you've run at a pretty high speed for a long period of time. So your muscles burn. So as the pyruvic acid is converted to lactic acid, so we can continue breaking glucose down, the lactic acid buildup causes the pH to go down, the pain receptors to fire, and again your brain interprets that as pain. Think of this as like running 2 laps around the track. The first half lap probably goes okay because your body still has enough oxygen. As it's not able to keep up with the demand for oxygen, we kind of have glycolysis going on here, producing pyruvic acid. As we continue and our demand for ATP continues to go up and our ability to provide enough oxygen goes down, the pyruvic acid is converted to lactic acid, causing the pH to drop, so that as you take that second lap around the track, your legs start to burn. The choice then is to be really tough and just keep running despite the pain, but most people will respond to that by slowing down and letting their body try to catch up. So that's the first half of our lecture on cellular respiration.